All right, well, there's a lot going on in Sacramento right now. The Fox saga continues. Sabonis was snubbed from the All-Star game once again. Am I upset? Of course, but am I surprised? Not at all. And obviously, Fox should have been in the All-Star mix too, but I do think Sabonis had a better case. And, I could get into all the reasons why the All-Star game and its selection process is flawed, but we sort of got bigger fish to fry. This is the most drama that I can remember there being pretty much since it was looking like the Kings were moving away from Sacramento. The Halliburton trade was dramatic for sure, but that was more so like after the fact. That trade kind of came out of nowhere. And then this Fox situation has become very public. And there's a lot of layers to this and a lot of possible scenarios to consider. But before I get into all that, I do want to say the end of the Boogie era had a lot of drama too. But man, I don't think it compares at all to what we've been through as Kings fans these last couple months. I mean, even dating back to the summer, like we thought Monk was gone, then he resigns and takes a pay cut and all that. Then we extend Mike Brown. We signed DeRozan. Things were looking up for the Kings. And then all of a sudden, we're 5 games under 500 in late December. Mike Brown gets canned. Fox is getting blamed for it. The Kings' ownership is radio silent. All is looking lost. And then the Kings go and win 7 in a row. They win 11 of 15. Players are saying the vibes are immaculate. Trade rumors are heating up with the Kings being buyers to try and finally build a team that can contend in the West. And then comes out the Fox's agent, Rich Paul, is like, yeah, that's cute, but y'all should really try and trade Fox before the deadline because he's not re-signing here. Matter of fact, let me fuck up his trade value real quick and let the whole world know that the only team he wants to sign with long-term is the San Antonio Spurs. That obviously sends the Kings fandom into complete chaos. The entire NBA world has something to say about it. Front page news type shit. And then on the back pages, turns out the Kings had a trade ready to go with the Jazz for John Collins. Matter of fact, the Kings had a deal on the table during the summer for John Collins, but Mike Brown was against it. So, in classic Kings fashion, the Kings did not pull the trigger, which, if I'm being honest with you, makes me think that Fox is going to stay put at the deadline because the Kings front office is paralyzed with fear when it comes to making trades. And, we're going on 3 trade deadlines now where our front office has not made a move, and I'm starting to think they can't make a move, as in they don't have the ability to, which is very concerning because making moves, and, I'm not talking about giving up all our second-round picks so we can dump players we don't want anymore. Those moves made us move in the wrong direction. I'm talking about moves that push us toward contention, moves that have not been made at the trade deadline since the last time we traded away a franchise point guard. Which brings us to today's topic. The Kings are once again trying to trade away their franchise point guard. So yeah, I think we're pretty much caught up now, except for this tiny little detail. Apparently, Vivek Ranadive, the Kings owner, of course, is heading to OKC to have a heart-to-heart with Fox and try to convince him to stay. I don't know how true that report is, but to me, that just goes to show how disjointed our GM and owner truly are, because our GM is listening to offers on Fox, and our owner is begging Fox to stay. So yeah, man, lots going on in Sacktown. I guess just to get this out of the way, the Kings don't have to make a decision on whether or not they want to trade Fox right now, but if they do decide to trade him, it's probably better to do so now so that you can get max value for him. But I don't know how much of a bidding war there's really going to be since Fox's camp has made it pretty clear that he has one destination in mind. So even if you trade for Fox, you're not guaranteed to keep him long term. And who knows? Maybe a team is fine with that. You get him now and you get 2 playoff runs with him. But from the Kings side of things, if you keep him, you got to try and build around him. And that's much easier to do right now this season than it would be after he signs his extension if he were to sign his extension with the Kings, which in all likelihood he would not. So just to make sure we're all following along here, if you want to keep Fox, you got to be aggressive this trade deadline. Build around him while you have the cap space and flexibility to do so. You make some moves, maybe for guys like Cam Johnson or John Collins, and hope that a move like that gets you a deep playoff run, and maybe that's enough to convince Fox to stay. Or if you're convinced he's not going to stay, you trade him now and recoup as much value as you possibly can. But that leads to other issues. Almost certainly, if you trade Fox, he's going to be the best player in that deal. You can try and get some win-now pieces back, but as far as true value goes, the best you're going to get is draft picks and maybe a young stud or two. For example, like Stephon Castle or Reed Shepherd. But if you go that route, you get a couple of young guys and draft picks, all of a sudden, your timeline has shifted, and guys like DeRozan and Sabonis and Monk are like, yo, we ain't getting any younger over here. The whole reason we chose to come here is to compete and try to win. But you just traded away our best player. which makes it a lot harder to win. Oh, and in case you missed it, DeRozan just made it very clear that the whole reason he came to Sacramento was to play with Fox and Monk and Sabonis and try to win at a high level. So if Fox goes, he's probably going to want to go too. So while trading Fox before the deadline may be the smart move, there are some possibly very real repercussions. A Fox trade might lead to more of your core guys wanting out too. Now, I do think there's ways for the Kings to potentially get better via a Fox trade, or at the very least, remain competitive. But honestly, I don't know how realistic that is. I think the best way for the Kings to remain competitive, or let's say the best chance the Kings have at maximizing this current group's potential, is by keeping Fox and trying to add some more talent around him. But you're obviously taking a risk there. You'd probably have to trade away some draft picks and perhaps even some of your younger players like Devin Carter to improve the team during this window you have with Fox and DeRozan. But if those improvements aren't enough to change Fox's mind, then you lose him for nothing or for at least a lot less than what you could have gotten for him if you were to trade him now. But if you trade him now, you run the risk of losing other guys like DeRozan, and then you pretty much have to start from scratch. But hopefully in that scenario, you'd be able to get some promising young prospects as well as a lot of draft capital, which if you pair that with Keegan and Keon and Carter, and maybe, you give the keys over to Monk, maybe you can jumpstart a rebuild that way and have an even higher ceiling in 2 or 3 years. But, we've seen how rebuilds go in Sacramento, so I'm a little reluctant to go that route. So just to recap once more, it kind of seems like the Kings are in a lose-lose scenario. And honestly, just to take a quick step back and kind of speak more generally, the two real options for the Kings, the two possibilities are you either lose your franchise guy or you keep him and have to pay him a supermax contract, or at least a max contract of 200. And I think the lowest it could be is 229 million. And quite honestly, I don't know if he's worth that type of money. I love Fox. I think he's still criminally underrated. But if he makes it all NBA, which, I don't think he will, but even if he doesn't and he signs that max extension with us, he'd be getting paid like a top 10 player in the league. And he's just not that. I think he's borderline top 20, which is still really good, but not, 300 million good. And if you pay him that much, it makes building the team around him that much harder. And you've already seen how hard it's been for this front office to build around him on his current contract. So if we're being super real about all of this, it's probably best for the Kings to trade him, not just to get max value back for him, but also so that we don't have to pay him superstar money. He's made All-NBA one time. He's been an All-Star one time. He's a fantastic player. He'll go down as one of the 2 or 3 best Sacramento Kings of all time. He's been underrated his entire career, but he's not a superstar. And it just wouldn't make sense for the Kings to pay him like one. So as much as it pains me to say, I think you should try and maximize his value and get back as much for him right now as he possibly can. And I keep saying right now, I don't know if you'd be able to get more value at the deadline compared to during the offseason. I do know during the offseason, more teams would be able to make a move for him. Teams just become more flexible in the summer once the season's over. But with all that said, it absolutely pisses me off that our front office has allowed it to get to this point. There's a very real possibility that we trade Fox before we ever see what he could have done with a complete roster around him. His entire time in Sacramento, he's had a very flawed, imbalanced roster, too many guards, not nearly enough wings or forwards, and because of that, we may never see what this team's actual ceiling is because our front office continues to sit on their hands and watch their best player leave because they didn't do enough to make him want to stay. And just to recap, by the way, in 2022, we traded Halliburton, somebody who could have been our franchise point guard. 2023, we do nothing. 2024, we do nothing, except, we signed DeRozan, which was a talent upgrade for sure, but it did not address our needs at all. In 2025, we might trade Fox, our actual franchise point guard. So we'll have traded 2 franchise point guards without ever putting a legitimate team around either one. Make that make sense. I don't fucking get it at all. Now, like I said, trading Fox now is probably what you have to do, but it's only necessary because of the way the front office has mismanaged his time here. Sabonis has been great. Monk has been great. Drafting Keegan was great. Finding Keon was awesome. But that's not enough. And in the Western Conference especially, you have to remain aggressive. And we have been one of the least aggressive teams outside of the teams who were or still are actively tanking. If we decide to keep Fox past the deadline and make a move for Cam Johnson or John Collins, I'll be excited to see what that team can accomplish, and I'll obviously always be rooting for this team. I don't know, man. It just seems like the writing is on the wall, and unless you can make a run to the Western Conference Finals and Fox feels like there's real unfinished business here, I just don't see there being really anything you can do to make him stay. And man, if I were Fox, I'd want to go play with Wemby too. Imagine being able to be the guy who's remembered as the point guard He's one of the best big men of all time. He could be the Robin to Wemby's Batman. And honestly, Fox's best chance at long-term success is being a part of Wemby and the Spurs' rise to dominance. I mean, the Spurs are trying to become a dynasty in the Western Conference, and Fox could be a huge part of that. Not to mention, his best chance at being in the Hall of Fame is by being Wemby's wingman. So I totally see why Fox would want to go there. And if we're being real, San Antonio is a much more attractive destination than Sacramento. They are a much more functional organization. They have an established culture. They have a future Hall of Famer. He'd be much closer to home. And listen, Fox has given 8 years to Sacramento. He's been amazing for this team and the city, given it his all the time, played through injuries, all of that. He's been a professional, a gentleman. I mean, you can't say enough good things about Fox. He's laid it all on the line for Sacramento. But the fact of the matter is, we haven't done enough to build a winning culture here, and frankly, that's what he wants. And I mean, is it hard to do that in a small market? Absolutely. But we're seeing it be done in OKC. We've seen Denver win a championship. San Antonio is a small market. Memphis is as well. It's not impossible. But apparently, winning in Sacramento is, and I think Fox has realized that, and he's had enough. And I don't blame him one bit. I just hope that we're able to get enough back to make the sting of losing Fox, my favorite player in the NBA, by the way, worth it. Are there moves out there that the Kings could make that would set us up for years of success? I think there are. Will our front office actually make one of those moves? I don't think they will. Let me know what you think, though. I think for my next video, I'll look at what a possible De'Aaron Fox trade could actually look like. But until then, as always, go Kings, light the beam.